A whale shark leaves a crowded feeding bay and enters water that appears almost completely empty. Behind it, plankton-rich currents had gathered food into a temporary feast near the coast. Ahead lies a blue horizon without shelter, visible landmarks, or any promise of another meal. The enormous fish keeps swimming, its broad tail pushing steadily through the open sea. From a boat, you would see only a spotted back, briefly dividing sunlight from deep water. Then the surface closes, and the traveler becomes a moving point inside an oceanic expanse. Whale sharks cross national boundaries and entire marine regions, yet individual routes vary dramatically. Their journeys connect productive coastal gatherings with distant habitats that researchers still struggle to identify. The central mystery is how a huge filter feeder survives and navigates between scattered pulses of food. No single migration pattern describes every whale shark, population, season, or stage of life. Some return to familiar sites, while others disappear beyond the practical reach of observers. The apparent emptiness is deceptive, because water masses carry gradients of temperature, chemistry, current, and life. Even so, resources are patchy, and a wrong direction can demand weeks of costly travel. The shark descends below surface glare, entering a three-dimensional route hidden from ships and satellites. Its departure begins an investigation driven by distance, changing habitat, and uncertain destination. The whale shark, Rhincodon typus, is the largest living fish and feeds mainly by filtering small organisms. Its wide mouth strains plankton, fish eggs, and small schooling animals from productive water. At seasonal aggregations, individuals exploit dense prey concentrated by currents, spawning events, or coastal topography. These gatherings offer direct observation, identification photographs, and opportunities to attach tracking instruments. The pale spot patterns behind each gill region are individually distinctive and support long-term photographic matching. Records show that many aggregation sites are dominated by juvenile males, leaving other groups less visible. Adult females and very small juveniles are rarely encountered at most well-studied coastal gatherings. Their scarcity creates major gaps in knowledge about breeding areas, birth locations, and full life cycles. Satellite tags have documented journeys spanning thousands of kilometers across ocean basins and regional seas. Some tags transmit when they reach the surface, while others archive depth and temperature before detaching. Tracking reveals routes and diving patterns, but tag loss often ends the story before arrival. Transmission gaps can reflect deep water, antenna position, biofouling, battery limits, or instrument failure. They do not prove that an animal stopped, died, or reached a hidden destination. Whale sharks commonly occupy warm waters, yet they encounter substantial temperature variation during deeper dives. Some descend hundreds of meters, and occasionally much farther, moving through darkness and colder layers. The reason for any single dive may involve feeding, navigation, predator avoidance, or thermal regulation. Without prey measurements beside the shark, confident explanations remain difficult. Their massive bodies store energy, but continued swimming and growth still require sufficient food over time. Open seas contain life in thin, uneven layers shaped by sunlight, nutrients, fronts, and vertical migration. Zooplankton often rises at night and descends by day, changing where feeding opportunities occur. A traveling shark can respond by altering depth, speed, or direction as conditions shift. Repeated sightings indicate sight fidelity in some individuals, suggesting memory within broader wandering. Verified evidence, therefore, shows mobility, deep diving, opportunistic feeding, and selective returns without revealing a universal itinerary. As the tagged shark moves offshore, its track begins to curve beside a broad current system. The current can assist transport, oppose progress, or concentrate prey along fronts and eddies. Researchers compare positions with ocean temperature and productivity estimates to test whether routes follow feeding habitat. Those comparisons reveal associations, but you should not mistake a satellite color map for prey measured inside the shark's mouth. Surface chlorophyll can indicate phytoplankton, while whale sharks often target animals linked indirectly to that production. Time lags and vertical structure may separate a productive surface signal from the actual feeding layer. The shark may cross apparently poor water because a distant seasonal bloom offers greater eventual reward. Alternatively, the route could relate to mating, reproduction, or inherited movement tendencies rather than immediate food. Evidence for specific breeding corridors remains limited because mating has rarely been observed. One pregnant female, examined decades ago, carried numerous embryos at different developmental stages. That remarkable specimen established reproductive facts, but it did not locate normal mating or birthing grounds. Traveler now dives beneath a warm surface layer into cold, dim water. Its descent may intersect migrating squid, crustaceans, or fishes beyond the view of remote sensors. If feeding occurs, acceleration and body movement recorded by advanced tags could eventually help identify it. Without such confirmation, a deep dive remains behavior with several plausible functions. Magnetic sensing has been proposed for long-distance orientation in sharks, based partly on broader elasmobranch evidence. Whale sharks may also use currents, temperature gradients, odors, celestial cues, or learned geography. No experiment has demonstrated a complete navigational map operating in a free-ranging whale shark. The clean arc of a track cannot reveal which cues were sensed at each turn, nor does a long, straight crossing establish that the destination was known from departure. Animals can search adaptively, updating direction when encounters, currents, or internal condition change. Individual variation is substantial, with some sharks remaining regionally faithful and others traveling extraordinary distances. Sex, age, reproductive state, prey cycles, and ocean conditions may influence those differences. Sampling is biased toward accessible surface aggregations, especially where tourism and research effort are concentrated. The unseen majority may use habitats that rarely bring dorsal fins within camera range. Consequently, population-wide maps assembled from tagged juveniles must be interpreted with restraint. The evidence sharpens one conclusion: these journeys are flexible responses, not a single clockwork migration. Flexibility matters because the moving ocean repeatedly changes the location and timing of food. At a distant front, converging water gathers plankton into a narrow, living seam. The shark detects prey-related cues, turns across the current, and begins surface ram feeding. Its mouth opens, water flows through filtering structures, and concentrated organisms become usable energy. This cue-action adaptation consequence sequence links oceanography directly to survival after a long crossing. When prey sinks during daylight, the shark may descend, adjusting depth to follow the shifting layer. Later, warming at the surface can permit recovery from prolonged exposure to colder deep water. If you watched its depth trace, repeated climbs and dives would resemble a negotiation with temperature and food. These choices influence growth, maturation, and the energy available for future reproduction. The journey also transports the shark through fisheries operating under different laws and enforcement. Slow growth and late maturity increase vulnerability when individuals are killed before reproducing. Ship strikes threaten whale sharks near busy surface waters, although the global scale remains uncertain. Tracking can identify overlap with shipping lanes, fishing grounds, and protected areas. Such maps support international management, because no coastal reserve can contain an ocean-crossing animal. Tourism at aggregation sites creates conservation value, but can also disturb feeding when vessels crowd sharks. Measured speed limits, approach distances, and monitoring can reduce immediate risks in those concentrated habitats. Climate change may shift plankton blooms, currents, and thermal boundaries that make established routes profitable. A remembered destination could become unreliable if its seasonal food pulse changes or fails. Mobile protection and coordinated reporting may therefore matter as much as fixed boundaries. The empty sea becomes a human landscape too, crossed by hooks, propellers, borders, and warming water. Future tracking must last longer and represent adult females, small juveniles, and regions beyond famous aggregations. Multi-year identification records can test whether departures lead back to the same feeding seasons. Improved tags could connect position with fine-scale depth, movement, and direct indications of feeding. Route comparisons with mapped fronts could test whether apparent detours repeatedly reach productive water. Researchers need predicted alternatives before analysis, such as feeding migration, reproductive travel, or current-assisted exploration. Each hypothesis should generate different expectations for timing, body class, route, diving, and destination. Evidence from several methods can converge, while no single tag should define the species. Longer records may reveal whether unusual crossings are rare detours or recurring pathways. International data sharing will be essential because the animal can outswim the boundaries of any project. When you see a gap in transmissions, uncertainty should remain visible rather than filled with an imagined adventure. The strongest future account will preserve missing segments while testing what happened before and after them. Some destinations may remain unknown because instruments detach in precisely the waters researchers most need to understand. At the horizon, the spotted shark resurfaces after days beyond sight of land. Its mouth is closed, its course steady, and no observer can yet name the next feeding ground. You are left with a verified traveler whose long crossing is real, while its complete purpose remains unfinished science.